Devil's Pass is a 2013 found-footage horror film directed by Rennaisance, best known for films such as Deep Blue Sea, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Cliffhanger, Die Hard 2, and one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, Cutthroat Island. The reason I share some of this filmography is to give you a rough idea as to where your sensitivities ought to lie as we venture into perhaps one of, if not the most mysterious and bewildering true stories of the Dyatlov Pass incident. In 1959, during a hiking expedition on the Ural Mountains that predominantly run through Russia, a group of 9 university students and associates led by Igor Dyatlov set up a camp in the remote area of Kalitsiakal, or more ominously translated as Mountain of the Dead. Overnight, all 9 of them perished, with Soviet officials concluding that the deaths were either the result of hypothermia or physical trauma, much of which has since been attributed to an avalanche or some unexpected force of nature. However, what keeps the incident in both the public and conspiratorial eye is the relative vagueness of that conclusion when we account for a myriad of what some might call bizarre or simply curious details. There were bodies found with missing eyes and a tongue, internal physical trauma but strangely no exterior wounds to explain it, evidence of someone having climbed a tree, bodies being inadequately clothed or wearing torn up clothing, the group individually being scattered around the mountain in various poses to suggest significant commotion, a tent torn open from the inside, and there was even evidence of radiation on one victim's clothing. As a result, it's led to countless theories and debates surrounding the particularities, ranging from predominantly scientific ones like hurricane-like winds, natural decomposition, animal interference, infrasounds that can have a physiological effect on our psyche, and paradoxical undressing where hypothermia can cause sufferers to think they're too hot, which the film calls hypothermic dementia. And then, of course, we have the conspiratorial side that the film decides to focus on. It was a government cover-up and the group were killed during military testing. It was UFOs, we cannot trust the lights in the sky. What, you mean the Aurora Borealis? And as one character in the film really hopes is true, Yetis. Now, that's just an extremely loose summary based on what the film recaps when introducing the incident, but if you're really interested, I have linked a video by Lemino that goes into much greater depth on the matter and is a very compelling watch. In my humble eyes, however, an avalanche mixed with natural circumstances seems like the most logical explanation, although apparently there's many opposing arguments to suggest there was no evidence of an avalanche, but hey, I'm no expert, I'm completely ignorant on the matter, I am happy to be corrected and educated in the comments. Either way, much like when I talked about the Roanoke colony in Vanishing on 7th Street and the Mothman incident in Point Pleasant in the Mothman prophecies, I'm here to focus purely on the film and what its story chooses to tell us. And oh boy, does Devil's Pass really stretch its conspiratorial chops, so brace yourself. Now, before we dive deeper into despair, this video is sponsored by Raycon. Everyone says their 2025 is going to be different, and for better or worse, resolutions or not, it definitely will be. Maybe you'll be like me and make plans for more holidays and self-care, or try to be more consistent at the gym, but whatever this year's journey may hold, these goals are made easier when you bring your Raycon everyday earbuds. Raycon's latest model is better than ever, packing a 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair 2 devices at once. Starting at half the price of other premium audio brands, everyday earbuds have been my go-to for many years now. They serve me well as a perfect companion while I'm suffering at the gym or detoxing at home after a stressful day, with their comfortable fit and consistent and excellent sound quality. I'm especially a fan of their active noise cancellation because it wonderfully blocks out background noises during phone calls, watching YouTube videos, or listening to engaging podcasts while walking my doggo Cheddar. And even though 2025 isn't guaranteed to be easy, Raycon's return policy is, with a 30-day happiness guarantee, no questions asked. Simply go to buyraycon.com/Ryan to get 15% off site-wide. That's right, you get 15% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/Ryan. Devil's Pass tells the story of a psychology student called Holly King, who receives a grant from her professor, Dr. Martha Kettles, to travel to the Ural Mountains to recreate a previously inconclusive field study that retraces the Dyatlov victims' footsteps in the hopes of understanding what happened both physically and psychologically. She teams up with a film student called Jensen Day, who essentially plays devil's advocate and tries to interject this scientific journey with conspiracy theories such as military involvement and Yetis. For example, Dr. Kettles first calls attention to a real book written by Yuri Yurovoy, a photographer during the initial search party, that heavily fictionalized the incident, including apparently suspecting Soviet government involvement. However, after his untimely death in 1980, all his records were lost, which Jensen argues is suspiciously convenient, so it must have been a cover-up by the government following an assassination made to look like an accident. It's important to stress that while the movie does acknowledge all the real-world elements of the incident, it's no surprise when I say it's completely embellished with conspiracy theories. But the thing is, it's less so to demonstrate the cultural contention of such a rabbit hole, and more so to foreshadow its absolutely, unquestionably batshit insane outcome. Trust me, it is worth the tedious wait. Now, I'm not here to debate ethics, but it's definitely not a film that's sensitive with its subject matter. It uses Dyatlov Pass purely as a gimmick to create a mysterious, superstitious setup and add some illusion of realism, but ultimately, as you'll come to see, it kind of forgets to do anything with it. I think the best worst film to compare it to is Chernobyl Diaries that came out the year before, that's not a found footage film but looks like a found footage film and uses the setup of exploring the Chernobyl exclusion zone to create what is essentially a generic mutant monster movie. I'm not saying that's where Devil's Pass is entirely going, it's much more jaw-droppingly ridiculous than that, but what I am saying is, we're dealing with some tasty schlock here, so leave your brain by the door. Anyway, Holly and Jensen recruit their team, consisting of audio engineer Denise and expert climbers Andy and JP, and begin doing prep work before excitably commencing their travels, only to suddenly cut to a news report detailing their disappearance. Fucking shocker. It mostly just recaps Dyatlov and everything I summarized in the opening, but the one curious detail that stood out to me was in the Russian report, where an interview with a local Mansi tribe leader sees him describe the region as a place where two worlds collide, where you can step from one world into the world of the spirits. In hindsight, there's a reason it specifically focuses on this, but in the context of a first-time viewing like it was with myself, I could see how it was blatantly trying to enforce every superstitious possibility from ghosts to yetis to mutants to zombies to convey the expectation that something supernatural is abound. The reports then reveal that a group of hackers called Conspiraleaks released the found footage from the group's camera onto a website, and thus we see events play out in real time 1 month prior. The first thing the group do is attempt to interview a man called Petr Karov, who was said to be the 10th member of Dyatlov's party but left the hike shortly before due to sickness, and later had a mental breakdown that left him institutionalized ever since. In reality, this is mostly untrue. Yes, there was a 10th member who left due to sickness, but their name was Yuri Yudin and they went on to live a pretty normal life, whereas in the film they arrive at the institution and are immediately turned away in hostility, with the orderlies claiming Karov is dead. However, dun dun dun, from an upstairs window they see an elderly man desperately holding a sign before being dragged away, who Holly believes is Karov, thus insinuating some form of cover-up. While you might think the mysterious sign means something significant, it's later lacklusterly translated to stay away, so it doesn't do the most convincing job at making me feel tense or compelled. By the way, before we move on, this is such a weird nitpick, but there must have been two versions of the script, because when Holly gets the sign translated, she refers to Petr Karov as Igor, and there's even a making-of video with a cut scene of her also saying Igor, but in whatever version I'm watching, she says both, thus creating a continuity error, and in the credits, it even says Petr Karov, so what the fuck happened here? Anyway, while planning the next stage of their journey at a bar, they meet a man called Sergei, who casually offers to guide them to the mountain, to which they gratefully take him up on, despite them building absolutely no rapport with the guy. They literally trust a stranger to drive them to where they need to be. I mean, in my head, I thought I was very confident in the idea that he was being set up to be an antagonist and leading them into certain danger, but nope, he serves that one purpose to get them from A to B, and then just disappears from the film. He exists more so to introduce them to his aunt Ayla, who reveals Sergei's father was the first person to find the Dyatlov bodies, and she became part of the initial search party. However, according to Ayla, the truth that people don't know about was the discovery of 2 additional bodies next to a strange machine that the military prevented the group from recovering that left Ayla and Sergei's father deeply distressed. With the vague knowledge that something is clearly wrong with the mountains, the group later venture ahead and set up their first camp. During their first night, a few spooky shenanigans pop up to build on that feeling of unease Ayla described, such as strange camera static, a distant monstrous howl one might think is just a wind, and in particular 2 pairs of unusually long bare footprint trails around their camp that abruptly disappear as though the 2 individuals that created them simply evaporated from existence. They even find a defunct weather tower containing a frozen tongue, which causes most of the group to feel unsafe and consider leaving, soon leading to a heart-to-heart between Jensen and Holly, who discuss strange nightmares and feelings of being connected to where they are. It's pretty empty as far as depth and meaning are concerned, but it does serve to foreshadow the eventual revelations where their nightmares and personal demons begin to make sense, especially Holly's claim that it feels as though the mountain is calling to her or something like that. To be honest, by this point I was growing bored before becoming distracted by the 2 figures scampering in the background, which is a feature I love seeing in films, especially with this film being shot on an actual snowy mountain to add a real legitimate sense of immersion. As director Rennie Harlan put it, the mountain itself becomes a character, and for as minimalistic as it is, it definitely helps sustain a strong atmospheric quality to lightly make up for the weakness of its plot and characters. Thankfully, things do eventually begin to pick up when the group arrive at the supposed location of Dyatlov Pass, where Andy and JP soon point out some peculiarities, such as their compass and GPS malfunctioning, and Andy's notable bewilderment that they've arrived significantly quicker than his coordinates indicate. Now, here's the thing before we go any further. Since I'm reviewing this film as a first-time watch, I want to point out that when the compass and GPS are soon shrugged off as possibly affected by a magnetic field, I started thinking about all the details, like place where 2 worlds collide, the extra bodies and strange machine the military took, Jensen and Holly feeling like they belong in the mountains or whatever cryptic nightmares they were having, and I couldn't believe I was asking this, but are they in some sort of time loop? Is this going to be a multiverse alternate dimension thing? Genuinely, where I think that absurd theory came from was that I had just watched Mandalore Gaming's video on Singularity before seeing the film, which has mutants fucked up by time distortion, and we still have yet to learn what those 2 figures are in the background, and they're clearly not human, as indicated when radiation enters the equation. Using a Geiger counter, Holly soon finds a hidden Soviet bunker beneath the snow, which she and Jensen keep to themselves as to not scare the others, who by this point desperately want to bail now the things are growing intense. Later that night, explosions occur in the distance, echoing one Dyatlov theory about the mountain being a military testing ground, and a violent avalanche occurs, destroying their camp, killing Denise, and leaving Andy with a tasty compound fracture. Yep, it's frozen all over again. Later that day, they're attacked by 2 random guys who shoot Andy dead, forcing Holly, Jensen, and a soon injured JP to take refuge in the irradiated bunker that clearly houses something dangerous. It probably comes across in the tone of my delivery, but there's no hiding just how impatient I was. The movie was obviously delaying the inevitable. The frozen tongue, the footprints, the howling, the 2 figures in the background. Everything to this point is delivered in such a flatline fashion that I never felt any tension or surprise. We're an hour into this movie, and we know by this point it's going to pull the whole government experiment gone wrong card and mutant creatures are on the loose. However, while yeah, that is pretty much the gist of it, what nudges it up a little is the incredibly wild swing it then decides to take. So, you know that silly little time loop theory I threw out? Well, it turns out that's what it's going for. I didn't say that to be a smartass who worked out the twist before anyone else, it's more so that I just admire the absolute balls on the film for going in that direction. So let me walk you through it. The three survivors venture deeper into the bunker and discover a destroyed lab containing a logbook of soldiers killed in action and a photo of a warship that Jensen believes is from what's known as the Philadelphia experiment. I had never heard of this before watching the film, but basically the Philadelphia experiment, according to the Naval History and Heritage Command, was an alleged account in 1943 of the US Navy experimenting with advanced technology, where their ironically titled ship, the USS Eldridge, was made invisible and teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk. In Jensen's telling of the account, there were rumors that the teleportation caused the crew to fuse to the ship, pretty much like what happens in The Fly, where the teleporter can't distinguish matter and DNA, so it combines everything into one, while those who survived the teleportation went insane, many of which even mutated. What has this got to do with the victims at Dyatlov? Well, you might as well just forget about that, because it doesn't truly do anything meaningful with it, besides very vaguely suggest that the Dyatlov group were maybe caught in the crossfire of the teleportation experiment, which would explain peculiar details like the missing eyes and tongue, and bodies with internal physical trauma but without any exterior wounds. Really, the only noteworthy connection is one final twist made at the very end that I'll save until then. It actually just leaves me asking, why didn't they not just focus on the Philadelphia experiment to begin with? It seems like there's a lot more potential in that idea. As they investigate further, they find a mutilated corpse whose tongue has been torn out, before discovering a pile of incinerated corpses from Soviet soldiers with bone structure that seems deformed, as if to insinuate the Soviet military were experimenting on similar teleportation, and soldiers basically got fucked up during the procedure, turning them into ravenous creatures. Obviously, what's clear is that some creatures escaped, but what makes things really bizarre is when Jensen and Holly find an identical camera to theirs that upon playback is an exact recording of everything they've already experienced and is now recording their current events in real time. In other words, it heavily implies they've been here before, that there is an active time loop or something to that effect currently going on. But I hear you ask, what about the monsters it's been building up towards? Well, there's certainly a choice. Maybe I'm just desperate for a positive here, but I actually think they're a little bit neat. They're composed entirely of jarring CGI, which you think would be a bad thing, but it inadvertently gives them that sort of off-putting uncanny valley edge, especially considering they're meant to be the chaotic result of teleportation, which they can also do, kind of like Nightcrawler and X-Men, thus explaining the evaporating footprints. They sort of just spend their time puffing about and chasing Jensen and Holly, trying to steal their tongues after eating JP's tongue, but soon after, purely for plot convenience, it turns out they cannot teleport through bunker doors because science. Even though we've seen them go outside, you've kind of already contradicted your own logic here, and what we're left with is this organic alien tunnel that Jensen, who now just fucking suddenly knows everything, claims is a wormhole. Yeah, I don't think that's what the Mansi leader was referring to when he said it's a place where worlds collide, but fuck it, we're this deep in, there's no going back.
The Mansi, the natives, Alia said that they've been here for thousands of years. I bet these drawings are theirs.
Continuing its insane pro-conspiracy angle, Jensen believes the military are trying to weaponize alien technology, and there are possibly more alien devices around the world that could explain the many unsolved mysteries of our planet. I swear to God he says this. Like, next he'll be saying it'll explain Roanoke and Mothman, which would conveniently tie my previous videos together.
It could explain all kinds of unsolved mysteries. The Eldridge, the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant.
Yeah, I am so done with this year. Also, I know for a fact at this point that many of you have probably wised up as to the identity of the two mutants, because we've established Holly and Jensen might have time traveled, we know that teleportation causes mutation apparently, and then from the glimpses of the creatures, it seems like it's a man and a woman. And I will say, to its credit, I actually think it's pretty neat, despite it being the most utterly bonkers outcome possible. So Jensen tells Holly they need to go through the wormhole while imagining where they want to land, otherwise the only alternative is to be killed by the mutants. And upon embracing the wormhole together, we cut to their motionless bodies back at Dyatlov Pass in 1959. Yep, Sergei's father and Aunt Ayla discover Holly and Jensen from the future, revealing them as the two individuals not recorded at Dyatlov, and the strange machine was their fucking camera. So, like when I reviewed the Mothman prophecies, I went into this film expecting standard creature feature schlock like the tunnel, and while yes, that's technically what I got, I was left utterly flabbergasted with how much other stuff it decided to pack in there. I don't think Devil's Pass is a good film. It's not scary or suspenseful, and the characters are fine at best. The reason I'm mainly covering it is because it's winter themed, I guess, but I cannot deny it doesn't go above and beyond expectations regardless of how low they were. At the end of the day, using the Dyatlov Pass incident was pure conspiracy bait to make the film seem more grounded and superstitious. You could make a simple hiking film about bodies found in a random mountain, and it wouldn't change anything narratively, except you would lose its sole gimmick. The Dyatlov Pass incident is a fascinating story that epitomizes our continued curiosity in science, nature, and the human condition, while also highlighting how some folks desire to conspire beyond rationale to suit their perceptions of the world. Devil's Pass, however, is simply another case of Hollywood capitalizing on true stories about real people without justifying a tasteful or meaningful reason to do so. Hey, Ryan from the future here. This video was meant to release back in December, but life happened, and so this ending part now makes no sense out of context, so all I'll say is I wish you a happy and prosperous new year, stay safe, send me your recommendations, stay away from time-shifting mutants, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.